9 times out of 10, or I'll say 95 out of 100, people don't leave the company. They leave their boss.
Welcome, everyone. This is Ed McGill, host of the podcast Led Leadership with Ed, as well as co-founder and partner at McGill Junkie Wealth Management. We're continuing our journey of just learning about leadership and hopefully impacting others across the country. And thanks for all of you that join us and listening on whether it be YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. We keep gaining more and more followers, so make sure you like, subscribe, comment, really do whatever you want on that side. And today we're going to have a lot of fun. We have one of, really not only one of my good friends, but what is commonly referred to as one of the best leaders, not only in Iowa, but across the country. We have the retired board chairman and former CEO of Principal Financial Group with us, Dan Houston. So Dan, welcome to Led, my friend.
Thank you so much, Ed. Thanks for having me on your show. Look forward to having a good conversation today.
It should be great. And when you think of all the highlights of that incredible career, which we'll talk about, where does being on Led rank?
I put it right at the very top, Ed. I mean, how could you not? No, I mean, here's what I would say. I applaud your efforts to try to get messaging out in this day and age on things we can do to enhance leadership. And I'm no expert, but I did do it for the better part of 41 years. And I think it matters in business and how you comport yourself, how you present yourself as a leader. It does matter. In particular, people just entering into the workforce.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that mentorship and the impact you can have on employees with their first boss. But, you know, I think back to something you said to me when we were talking about some of the charitable things, that when you drink from the well, remember who dug the well for you. Yeah. And as I was thinking about that, is that more tied to your community involvement, or can that also be, you know, just even when you're at that company that the current people who are listening are working for?
Yeah, it's actually a Chinese proverb. When you drink from the well, remember the men and the women who dug the well. And I think it's applicable not only in a business environment, Ed, I think it's very applicable in our personal lives. But don't take credit for things that you didn't do. And frankly, all of us are here just to continue building on that platform of success. And you think about the leaders that were in your position before you went into the role, whether it was, you know, administrative assistant, whether it was an actuary, an underwriter, a contract writer, an attorney. The basis by which you're building upon is the idea that you just keep on leaving it better than what you started with. And so when you drink from the well, make sure you give credit to those people. And make sure, for goodness sakes, that you leave it in a better position than when you took it over. That's the goal.
And isn't it true when you say give credit to those that dug the well? You know, even people that are very humble, not looking for recognition, I think just that acknowledgement goes such a long ways and gives you so much, in my opinion, so much more credibility. And as my wife says, makes you look more attractive to others when you're willing to recognize those that came before you.
I think, you know, there also is a saying, Ed, there's a point in your career where you're no longer polishing your resume, you're polishing your headstone. And on that headstone, what would you want it to say? And my guess is it wasn't, he was a selfish leader. My guess is you'd want to say he was a servant leader and that he or she really helped individuals and groups accomplish things that without their potential leadership, they would not have been possible. And so I think that's really the point, which is to recognize that sharing the success with the people that actually do the work, because everyone knows who did the work. I mean, there's no mystery to that. But I'd also say this, when there are challenges and there's blame, as the leader, you need to own it all. Take that, you know, so if you want to own something, take the blame on things that don't go well. Don't worry so much about the credit for those things that went exceedingly well for your organization.
No, that's awesome. I'm going to actually, you said something that was maybe tied to something later I was going to ask, but I wanted to bring it up here where you said, you know, recognize those that did the work. As you ascended, you know, eventually, and for those of you who don't know, Dan started at Principal right out of college. Well, first of all, tell the great line that the person recruiting you said to you, because you had 3 job offers from Iowa State.
Yep.
And there was a very distinctive line that he said to you that allowed you or made you think about accepting the principal job. And then I'll kind of tie on to that.
Yeah, we were actually on the way to the airport down in DFW because that's where I was interviewing for the day. And one was a tire and battery company, the other one was in the plywood business. And as we're driving out there, and your viewers would likely not know that the Principal Financial Group is nearly 150 years old, and our original name was the Bankers Life Insurance Company of Des Moines, Iowa. So we're driving out to the airport, Ed, and this really adept sales leader has said to me, he said, Dan, he says, do you want to be in the plywood business the rest of your life? No, sir, I don't know that's the best fit. Do you want to be in the tire and battery business the rest of your life? I said, gee, I don't know, Mr. Sims, maybe that's not the best fit. He says, if you join the Bankers Life Company, you'll change lives the rest of your life. And that has never left me. And I think about the mission of what we do at the Principal Financial Group, providing financial security to literally nearly 70 million people around the world. That's a big deal. And so Chad Sims was right. What joining the Principal Financial Group allowed me to do is to join an organization that was, already over 100 years old, and to perpetuate the growth around the globe in 80 different countries around helping people achieve financial security. And that's something you can get excited about every day when you wake up and go to work.
Well, it really is. And what a great line by Mr. Sims, because,
Oh, yeah.
Depending on what the other offers were, it didn't matter once he said that. It's like, I want to impact lives. And when you think about, giving people credit, this is a question I want to ask. As you've ascended, how are you able to recognize people when you said actually doing the work? Because it could be multiple levels down, Dan. I mean, that had to be hard. Like, what was some of the strategies or things you employed so that the day-to-day employee at Principal that was really driving a lot of the results could feel appreciated and that they knew that Dan and the leadership team cared about them?
Yeah, whether it's a blessing or a curse, I don't know, but I've got a pretty good memory, and certainly for names and faces. And when you've been around as long as I have around the organization, the reality is a lot of the people. And there's no better opportunity than to do that in public audiences. And typically the CEO of Principal, whether it's our current CEO and chairman of the board, Deanna Strebel, or my predecessor, Larry Zimpelman, president, chairman, town hall meetings were very much part of the culture. And that is a prime opportunity. A lot of people are there in person. A lot of people are listening in. But when they hear their jersey number get called out, that's pretty exciting, whether you're recognizing an area or a specific person. But the reality is success is really the reality and the output of literally dozens of team members that are organized to go after something, and giving them the appropriate attention publicly or through writing, communications. All of those are great ways to do that.
Well, and I love where you said the town hall, because one of your key team members and hires that has been on lead, the great Kathy Kay, your
Yes.
chief information officer, she said she got hired during COVID. And so she had mentioned the town halls where that was just where they could meet her, and how people absolutely loved that because they felt a connection. And I love what you said there. I wrote it actually down where you said people love hearing their jersey number called out.
Yep.
And just that recognition of even their name mentioned on the town hall, then they get the texts or the Slacks that are coming. Can't believe Dan just mentioned your name, or Deanna mentioned the name. That goes a long ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And Kathy Kay is an outstanding leader, and I know she was on one of your previous episodes. And Kathy was the first executive I recruited and hired sight unseen. I mean, you just don't do that. I shouldn't say sight unseen. Everything was remote in terms of recruiting her, and she was on board for 5 or 6 months before I actually met her in person. Right? She was
Oh, wow.
working remotely, so all the interviews were done remotely. She was out on the West Coast, and when you finally get a chance to meet the person that's reporting to you, it's pretty exciting. But I don't know of many good things that came out of COVID personally, but I will say, as long as we try to leverage video conferencing for a variety of situations, whether it was customer service with large clients or recruiting, this whole medium of being able to on demand use remote video conferencing is great, right? And because we're all used to it now, we're doing that here today. So, and Kathy is just an absolute champion of technology, innovation, creativity, thinking about problem solving differently, and she's recruited a great team that accomplishes some really exciting initiatives to better support the company.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And I think about with Dan, with you, I saw at a couple different events where people introduce their children to you, and then you'd say, "Hey, give me a call. Here's Mary's name and number. I'd love to just," and you have to be disciplined there. It's like, I'd love to spend 10, 15 minutes with you, in my office. Even those little things, I saw you do that with John Hellick. I saw Marty Walsh and his introduce his daughter and things like that. It was amazing to see how gracious you were. But somewhere along the way, you probably realized that was me when I was 22 to 25. And if I would have got 10 minutes with, someone at that level, it resonates forever, doesn't it?
It really does, and you're trying to accomplish a number of things by having a young person join you in a professional environment. And there's a lot of people that never have gone past a security desk in an office building. So getting people who are maybe not as comfortable with the idea of parking your car, going inside, talking to the security person, gaining access to the building, talking to a senior executive. And if you think about all of those subtle learnings that are involved in that, right? They all sort of build on one another, but it builds their confidence. And the worst thing you can do is to sort of shower that individual with a lot of peppering questions that in any way demoralizes them. So the idea is to learn a little bit about them, find out what their goals and life dreams are about, and then to try to provide some honest feedback. And I typically do try to provide some feedback on whether it's eye contact or how they sort of engage with professionals and things that they might think about, books they might consider reading, different things they might stylistically alter as they sort of join the workforce and start becoming more and more susceptible to being judged about their candidacy for a role and an opportunity. So giving these young individuals every possible shot is certainly my objective.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then they can see that it's coming from a place of caring. So now when you do give that constructive feedback, it's better received. When you think of mentorship or just the impact, I read where you said, if you ask someone later in their lives, who had the biggest impact on you personally or professionally, a lot of times, they're going to mention a family member. There might be a coach or a teacher or something like that. But you said inevitably, a lot of times they'll come back to their first boss.
Yep.
And the responsibility you have to them to provide that. And as you were saying that, Dan, it made me think not only about, my role here at McGill Jungie, but when I was coaching all the youth sports, I thought this may be the only time that they have a coach, or what is their impression of what a coach is going forward, and really the responsibility of that. Tell me how you did that. And then also maybe, the audience always loves, okay, where did we fail? Where did you fail as that boss to someone that needed something and you're like, yeah, that did not go the way it probably should have?
Yeah. So when I was up at Iowa State taking accounting 284, Dr. Getz was the instructor. And he said something I've never forgotten. And his comment was, everyone in this room is a sophomore in college. He says, I have a basic belief. A second grade school teacher can screw you up the rest of your life. If you come out of my class screwed up, I'm going to assume you came in that way. And if you break that down, Ed, into its component parts, you think about that young second grader, right? They're about 7 years old. If they're typecast as a troublemaker, or they don't engage or collaborate, or they're isolated, or whatever the case might be, the attention that second grader gets, good or bad, is very, very significant.
Yep.
It has great significance on how they're going to live their life. I'm absolutely convinced, let alone the parenting. but parents are parents, right? So now we're talking about external people that influence us. So when I think about that, I think about your first boss. A lot of people, don't have jobs through high school anymore. They're in the workforce. You have some of these helicopter parents who still try to engage at that level, reaching out, which blows my mind. But you think about people who leave organizations. And Ed, you've been around a long time. You've got a big client base. I know you do. 9 times out of 10, or I'll say 95 out of 100, people don't leave the company. They leave their boss. They didn't particularly. Now, I know sometimes industries go through challenges. Sometimes it's a 2.5%, 2.5 times increase in what they can make financially, or they want to move back to the East Coast or the West Coast, something
Yep.
like that. But 9 times out of 10, the majority of the time, people left to their own sort of self-reflection. I left because of an individual more so than a company. And so that's why I think it's so important to provide the mentorship and the guidance and the leadership that's required. To the second part of your question, Ed, around this topic of failure, and God only knows I've got enough of those. And I would say early on in my leadership role, I probably was not as transparent with people's deficiencies or areas I felt that they were crippling themselves for upward mobility, and should have been more forthcoming with areas of improvement. And to remedy that, one of the things I had adopted many years ago, 20 plus years ago, was I no longer use the standard home office, if you will, corporate center appraisal format. I went to a very simple format. Here's the 5 things I think you're doing well. Here's 5 areas that I think you could improve upon. Here's 2 ideas I think you might want to think about from a development perspective. But Ed, more importantly, where do you think you want to develop? And getting to that 5 and 5 forces your hand to identify those 5 areas where there could be improvement made, because all of us could use it. So that's something I didn't implement that as soon
Enough. Yep.
soon enough in my career.
Did you not implement not necessarily just the 5 or the transparency because the difficult conversation, or you felt it was going to be difficult, that was a little bit stomach churning? Was it, well, I got to be nice to this person because I want them to say good things about me? What prevented that transparency that ultimately you developed?
I don't want to blame it on age, but I was 28 when I had my first set of leadership responsibilities. And at 28, I had no one that was reporting to me that was anywhere near my age. They were sort of
That was 28.
yeah.
Yep.
Right. And it was probably a little bit of intimidation, right? I'm a young new leader. These were very seasoned veteran individuals, and I was probably a bit intimidated about that and how to take that on. And the more and more I, was in those leadership roles, the more and more confident that I got finally to the realization that I wasn't helping them. Matter of fact,
Yeah, that you're actually hurting them by not being transparent.
that's it, Ed. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Did you find the 5 and 5 was well received? Did people give pushback, or were they like, okay, he really actually put thought into this though, versus, I've seen some of those evaluation questionnaires and, really was a person a 3 or a 4? Like, hey, I gave you a 4.2 because you're like, you don't want to actually tell them that they weren't doing the best job. Like, how was the feedback when you started going to that?
I'd say for those that knew me, they sort of said, yep, I get it. I got it. I understand what's here. For those, as you sort of rise up in an organization and other senior leaders now are reporting to you because of your promotions, and it's the first time to sort of experience, in spite of telling them in the very beginning that this is how this is going to go down for the mid-year and the end of year performance reviews, I think it was a little bit shocking would be too much. But I think it was sort of, well, no one's ever told me that before. I've been with the company for 25 years. And that's not, that's no one's fault. I mean, and it is one guy's opinion, right? I mean, it's just my views on trying to help that individual. So I would say as time went on and everyone knew the rules of engagement, it became accepted. It was fine. And I really do think and you described it. Am I a 3.7 or 4.2? I have no way of even trying to unwind that yet. But if you told me, Dan, these are the 5 areas that you're doing well, and these are the 5 areas. Now, the weightings don't have to be the same, right? The weightings could be you're doing 95% of what you're supposed to be doing perfectly. Here's the 5%, and this 5% are these 5 things. And as you increasingly provide leadership to more senior people, let's face it, they didn't get there because they weren't smart, capable, skilled.
Yeah.
These are those subtleties. And the subtleties are where you need to make these adjustments because it can potentially become a barrier to them getting that next promotion. And so by not discussing it, by not putting light on it, it really does hamstring them, and it puts them in a penalty box, and that's on the part of the leader, right? That I got to own that.
See, what I love about that if you truly care about them, their career, their progression, that those are the things they need to know. And I like how you preferenced it where potentially you could say, well, this is one man's opinion. This is what I am seeing. This is my truth. You have your truth, but maybe see if this theme ends up showing up other places or other people saying that. You do need truth sayers in your life, there's not a lot of them that you can find that will actually tell you what is correct. My wife is one. I bet Joni is one for years. So Dawn
No doubt.
tells me I am your truth sayer. Is Joni the same way?
Yes, she is. I will tell you though, she has not taken well and since my retirement on her mid-year performance reviews. She's pushing back on these issues, but I think I'm trying to help her, but she is resisting. I'm teasing. It's an interesting dynamic. So I think the other thing, Ed, to note, and I've said this publicly, I discriminate every single day among our leaders, but I discriminate equally. Meaning, I'm a servant leader. I'm gonna tailor my messaging and my leadership to the individual in which I'm leading, because it isn't their job to adjust to me. It's my job to adjust to them. So all of those things are tailored. And when you go to a standardized methodology, it makes tailoring pretty darn difficult. And the other thing, and this is sort of master the obvious, as these opportunities to coach happen throughout the course of the year, that's your opportunity. You don't wait till the mid-year or year end, right? I mean, those are sort of like the formal check-in points. You're providing feedback, after people give presentations or you see engagement with a customer and engagement with an employee. That's the right time to provide the feedback. Don't sit on that. Make a note of it. You may bring it up again, but real-time coaching. You see it every Sunday, right? You see it every Saturday watching football games. Real coaching at the right time.
Yeah, and I love that. Would you say that again about discriminate? Because, if someone, sometimes when you're listening to a podcast, you kind of are driving or doing something else too, and someone could hear the word where you said, I discriminate, and like, wait, what did he say? So say that again, how you said that, and then I'll maybe add something to that.
I discriminate my leadership equally, okay? And said differently, I know every one of my direct reports needs something different. And so when I talk about being discriminate, it's discriminating in terms of how I work with that individual, because I'm not going to ask that they adjust to my style. I'll adjust to their style. And given the wide range of styles that are out there, it's up to me to discern what's the best way in which to motivate and maximize their contribution to the organization. And you can't do that by just having a standard playbook. The playbook in this case is adapt, adjust to the individual by which you're coaching.
Did you find yourself discriminating also with or maybe that's not the right word, but like when you saw someone or a lot of characteristics in an up and coming leader, how did you identify them or help them accelerate even more, but still helping the others that you're also going to need? I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but there are certain characteristics that people saw in you. So I'm sure that you saw some achievers. You're like, okay, that man or woman should be on the leadership team at some point. And did you discriminate by giving them more of your time to help them more, or was it the same throughout?
I've always run an open door policy, which has allowed people to get on my calendar, and it's early in the morning. My policy was anytime between 5 and 6:30, I would take the meeting in the mornings because that was open time. And to answer your question directly on identifying, I think it's a mistake to too narrowly cast the net on the next gen of leaders coming up in the organization. So you cast a much broader net. And
Yep.
I would also say, Ed, that what you don't want to do is have too many Dans. More than one Dan's. That's
One Ed's enough.
one Dan's.
I'd say 2 or 3 Dan's is good. One Ed's plenty.
But the reality is, you want to have this very diverse way of thinking and problem solving and stylistically. And there's some core tenets. They got to be able to communicate well, both verbally and through their writings. They have to be good collaborators. If they can't work together as a team, it will fail. If they don't support the vision and the mission and the strategy of the organization, that's also a sign that we're going to be bifurcated. So you encompass the three things that really matter there with a lot of passion and a lot of perseverance. Stylistically, it runs the range. Some people like going early in the morning. Some people stay later at night. Some people are love to be road warriors. Other people don't. And making sure that you are helping them identify where their strengths are and identifying also where areas of improvement are. And there's some areas you're never going to improve. So what you do is just sort of tamp those down and minimize that and build upon the areas of strength. And I know that's an old adage that's been around for a long time. But the worst thing you could do is not to highlight for someone who's in a leadership role or even an individual contributor role that they've got a deficiency in their ability to collaborate, their ability to be part of a team, their ability to properly communicate, ability to problem solve. And so that's the name of the game.
No, that's good. And maybe tied to that, now you'll see, flexibility comes out more in job interviews. I know you're not a big fan of the hybrid model, so we can talk about that, but flexibility in family time and flexibility, you just said, if you wanted to see me, I had an open door from 5:30 to 6:30. And I know some of those days you and I met just on a personal level at some of those times. Mary was always there as well too.
He was, yeah.
which was awesome. Do you ever compromise on the flexibility, or like if someone didn't get the promotion they want, like, I can't be too hard on the one day work from home because we really need that person going forward? Or, how did you view maybe not so much the hybrid, but even just some of the flexibility that seems to be more of the norm versus the expectations of getting the job done and being here collaborating?
Yeah, so let me be on the record. I have no issues with flexibility. I have more challenges with someone in a capacity where they're providing leadership in a complete remote environment.
Yep.
Because I don't know that the individuals that report up through them are getting the level of engagement and leadership and opportunities to see them work in a larger group. And for those reasons, I just don't think long term that a completely remote leader, it's going to work out. Snowstorm, rainstorm, parents are ill, child's ill, all of those areas. For goodness sakes, yes, all the flexibility in the world. One of mine always was around, people who lost a loved one. I don't like brevity policies that are too stringent. It's like, you know what? They may need a week. They may need a couple of weeks. Come back when you're ready, right? These are difficult, hard things to do. So I'm not trying to come across as rigid or too constrained. I'm at a very high level of the opinion that the more interactions we have face to face, collaborating to solve problems in a world that is increasingly complex, right? There's the IT folks and people from the business side and the product development and the sales and the marketing. Maybe there is some model out there that is exceedingly successful and it's working for a company with 20,000 plus employees doing business in 80 different countries. I just haven't found it. I just haven't seen that yet. So things will change over time. AI is going to change things, remote work, hybrid work. But the real point I'm trying to make, Ed, and it's the one I want your listeners to understand, is there is great benefit for individuals coming together in person, having dinners, lunches, getting to know their families, getting to know the individual face to face that sets them up, I think, for better long-term success as a high potential operating team.
Well, I love that. So hopefully everyone heard that with the flexibility is there because that's the human element. When you said bereavement, I know Ross and I, who and you know Ross well too.
Yep.
You know, we had the ability to coach our kids throughout.
Yep.
You know, our careers. His was a little bit harder in corporate America, but now when our team members want to go watch their sons or daughter play basketball games and stuff, like, yeah, because that's where I'd want to be. If you're here, you're not thinking about it. You're thinking about that game and maybe watching it on your computer and on that side. So I appreciate the clarification on that. And thinking on this last 10 minutes together, you know,
Well,
principal
Ben,
just went,
let me
oh,
let me interrupt because I just want to add two clarifying comments to that I think might be helpful because I was deficient for not identifying this. My wife Joni, she gave up a corporate role to raise our kids, and so never discount the value of your partner, your spouse, husband, wife, whatever. The roles that they play can be enormous. And Joni was every bit as part of the principal as I was in terms of knowing the employees and participating along the way. But she carried a big load relative to things that were here at the house and those sorts of things. So I just want to be on the record that the relationship you have with your partner, your spouse, it really does impact you. The second thing I would say
100%. Yeah.
is your roles depend on things, right? If you're an individual contributor and some of your job has more flexibility than others, it's when there's a dependency of the rest of the team where you need to recognize if that's the career in which I'm choosing, it may have more limitations on what you're describing as flexibility than other certain roles. And I think you're presenting that with Ross in his previous role and your role. They were quite different, very both important. But your role was a little bit more individual contributor at the time where he had more team dynamics to manage his way through there. But nonetheless, you both did it and you got great results in your kids.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for that. And I love that, the dependency of the rest of the team, because we've had that discussion with people that, you know, are on this career path to become advisors and say, you know, that dependency when you're an advisor, it never leaves with your clients. So that phone will be going with you. You can put in parameters and, you know, some things to say, here's where, but there are going to be time frames where you have to be available. So I love that, the dependency of the rest of the team on you. So, well, speaking of dependency, actually probably not, she's not dependent on you, Deanna, anymore. So you'd mentioned this transition on there. And, you know, I thought it was interesting as you worked with her and prepared her for this transition. What has been reinforced to you about her that the modern leadership style requires? Like, what was it in her? And now that you're seeing, you know, her in action, you're like, okay, this is that next level type of leader that can, you know, build on the culture that you had built on before with Larry and others before. But what about, you know, her shows what modern leadership requires?
Absolutely. And Deanna is the perfect fit for the Principal Financial Group.
Yeah, she's awesome.
She's 35 years with the company, actuary by training, but has a strong mind around strategy and vision and capital markets, has a huge passion around the customers, understands the role of distribution and sales. She embraces technology. And you don't start that when you become CEO, right? I mean, she's got this track record of leadership and attention to detail. But where you started your question, Ed, is what she will carry on. It's the culture piece. Every company has a certain culture. Cultures will grow as time goes on and they become modern, but there's certain things around ethics and honesty and trustworthiness. Those things never go out of favor. And she is a trusted leader. She is a competent leader. She is a person that people respect. She's led industry groups. And so those are the things in which she's just going to continue to build upon. And the beauty of it is she has a platform now that reaches more of her external customers, internal employees, distribution partners, global partners, joint venture partners, etc. So it is really about continuing the mission of helping people achieve financial security throughout their lives, throughout their career, but most importantly is to make sure that when they reach that date in which they decide to retire, they've got things in place, whether it's their life insurance, their disability insurance, their long-term care insurance, certainly their retirement benefits. You can't start that right at the end of the journey. You gotta have someone that's helping you along every single step of the way. It's the value that you and other advisors provide to clients. And once again, as I described earlier, sometimes employees don't want the brutal truth. My guess is you've had conversations with clients. They didn't like the brutal truth about reducing spending, spending more to purchase protection or accumulation tools that would set them on the path for financial success. And again, straight talk on your part to a client to say, you got to change a few things. That's invaluable. It's invaluable.
That's funny you say that because I did have a conversation with a couple and we do very comprehensive, complex financial planning here. And I said, hey, they said, how's our plan look? We're excited to see it. I go, well, it looks great. And they go, really? And they go, yeah, as long as you're both dead by 78. Other than that, and I laughed like that to kind of ease the tension, but I was serious.
Right.
And said, yeah, as long as you're both dead by 78, everything's good. Now, if one of the two of you go past that, we've got some issues. So those are the tough conversations. And when you think of with Deanna, I'd be curious because I heard Kathy Kay mention this as well too. She said one of the things that Deanna instills in them is that talking about how your leadership makes it to your employees' kitchen table. I think I'm not sure if I said that correctly, but the dinner table, that your employees are talking about you and what happened and stuff. Is that something that you impacted on her, or just something that you all as a leadership team thought about? Is you're not only impacting the current day-to-day employee, but they're bringing this stuff home, and people are asking, how'd your day go? What happened today? Does that make sense on that, or is that something that was instilled?
Yeah, it is. I think it's human nature, Ed. I think at the end of the day, how you treat people at the end of the day is how you want to be treated yourself. Yeah. And to the extent that you can have an employee, whether they are being acknowledged for having done something really well or acknowledging something that didn't go so well, when they can go home with their head held high to know that either they're really sort of relishing and celebrating the success, or they went home recognizing, yeah, I could have done that better. How you said it, how you packaged it would allow them to take that home and share the success, or to say, you know what, I could have done something a little bit differently. But there is nothing good that comes out of demoralizing people. Zero. To the extent that you are a coach, coaches help people be better. And you need to strike the emotion from it in terms of how you deliver that message, meaning I don't raise my voice. You've never heard me raise my voice. It's intentional around maintaining the calmness and creating an environment where a person can receive positive or negative feedback in a way that isn't counterproductive to their long-term well-being, mental well-being.
Oh, I love that part. And when you think about, as you were going through that transition or even thinking about it coming, because you said once, you did tell me one time, once you came into that role, you start thinking about your legacy and the next person, even like on day one, you'd only been CEO for a day and you're like,
right,
okay, eventually I got to pass this baton. Where did you see, maybe not so much from principal, just in general, where did you see transitions fail, or what caused those failures in your mind? Because you probably did do, knowing you, some research and studying on that. What were some of the key lessons you learned when you studied transitions that did not go well?
Well, I'm going to actually expand your question, Ed, to not only be transitions but also acquisitions. And acquisitions, there's three really sort of important pillars to an acquisition. It's the strategic fit, it's the financial fit, and it's the cultural fit. And the cultural fit is the one that I think generally gets shortchanged, because you'll say stuff like this. Well, they'll come around to our way of thinking. So it hits the strategic fit, it hits the financial fit, but they'll certainly sort of adopt and sort of come into our culture. It is 9 times out of 10 where the failure occurs in an organization. Because if you don't have cultural alignment, the very people you attracted, the talent, because oftentimes you're attracting the talent, right, in the book of business and the producers and so forth.
That's part of the strategic is talent that we want.
That is correct. And so therefore, if you don't get cultural alignment, it won't work. Also, so that's sort of in a mass basis, right? You bought a small, mid, or large company, because small, mid, or large, they could all be incredibly disruptive to alignment around the culture and growing the organization. Well, the same thing can be true about hiring an individual, in particular when they become more senior and they say one thing and do another, right? So they want to see customers being served. They want to see distribution partners have the appropriate amount of respect, but they may culturally be so toxic that they create a environment by which people just can't stay with the organization. And it's
can't operate and stay. Yeah,
it's right at the top of this episode, right, where I mentioned very specifically, people don't leave companies. People leave leaders and individuals. And so therefore, these transitions are quite intentional in terms of how you do it. You first put them in a role of president, chief operating officer, and see how that goes. Then you put them in the role of the chief executive officer while still retaining the role of executive chairman. And then eventually that person becomes chairman. So that over that 3-year period of time, there's a lot of coaching and there's a lot of self-reflection on this is a role. In a lot of companies that have 20,000 plus employees, in many roles, there are dozens of people in that role. In our company, there's one CEO. There's some companies that might have two. There's only usually one president, chief operating officer. So the number of opportunities for people to try that on is very limited. And so clearly the steps leading up to that, whether it's a senior vice president, executive vice president, all of those become critically important milestones for them to hone on certain skills. Well, what are the skills? They've got to understand the entire organization, not just the organization in which they're leading. They need to be collaborative across the organization. They need to share success and failure and know that even though it may not have been directly in their area, they got to own that because in some way they would have contributed that because they would have been part of a senior management team. How they communicate internally and externally, how they share successes, how they own failures, all of those things you're paying very keen attention to during that period of time to make a determination. Yep, they're learning, they're growing, because we're all going to continue to grow, right? It's just the way it is. And we want to constantly improve ourselves.
Was it a last question on just the transition? You came up through the sales side with, 401ks were actually relatively new at the time frame where you were coming. So you came, from Iowa State, a great university right here in central Iowa, and, marketing, get on the 401k pension side, which Principal is, such a strong worldwide leader in that space. And so you were used to being out front, the presentation, very comfortable, just, talking to people in the hallway. You had to remember names because you were meeting on clients, and that probably helped you later in the career. With Deanna coming from the actuarial side, was that one of the things that she had to develop? It's just a different, can be a different personality, a different kind of core unit, or when she kept getting these other roles, you just saw that being able to expand for her?
Yeah. Remember, and I commented earlier appropriately, so that, actuarial by training, capital markets, strategy, vision, she'd serve some
very
time.
Smart in a lot of areas.
But she also ran our life and division and group benefits division. So she has worked with distribution people all of her life. And so therefore not a stranger to that. She had windshield time with producers out there living the experience, because there's nothing like being out on the front line. You know that all too well, Ed. You understand exactly what I'm saying. There's nothing like being right there with a customer, because they're oftentimes not able to articulate what they need exactly. But you're listening and understanding what the challenges are, and then you'll fill that back in. The couple that you mentioned earlier that, as long as they didn't live past 70-something years old, But the good news is, if you have an advisor that's age, and let's just make up, say they were 55, they got sort of like 13 years to get their act together. And so there's more
Yep.
than plenty time to do that. But if you'd sort of taken a pass to say, it's not that serious, to the extent that it was flagged, and, if we make these small incremental changes today around spending and around these particular products, we can put you on the path to 100%, nearly 100% certainty that you're not going to run out of money if you sort of live within these standards. That's really important work. And so back to your transition with Deanna, she understands all the math. She understands all of those component parts, and so she understands marketing, distribution, technology because of the prior roles that she has served in. You also have to remember,
Mm.
whether it's Northwestern Mutual or Principal Financial Group or any other company out there, there's usually an executive leadership team. And executive leadership teams are made up of the businesses and the support areas. They're probably meeting every 2 weeks. There shouldn't be any mystery of a large company on where opportunity exists for better communications or collaboration or deficiencies and moving talent around. I do think, from a talent management perspective, the more you can do that at the junior and mid-junior levels to get them exposure to different types of businesses, the better your candidate pool is for senior level roles within the organization. You don't want to have a person who's a senior vice president that hasn't been an operator in other parts of the organization, especially if they're as big and as complex as ours is.
Well, and that's what I was thinking as you were describing everything Deanna did. And I bet the same thing held true for you when you said you had your first leadership position at 28. And if we were to go through all the different roles of just how important it is as a leader to allow the up and coming leaders to experience different areas, things outside maybe initially their comfort zone or what they know, so that they can develop that. And just as important, if you're one of the up and coming leaders listening, is raise your hand for
Yeah.
things and have conversations with that mentor, that leader, to say, I think I want to go over here because it could give me this skill set that I haven't fully developed. And I bet you had a lot of people over the years that just raised their hand, Dan, and you helped them guide that why certain choices you saw for them or that they were asking about was going to be beneficial to their career. So maybe we'll end with that. We'll let you just kind of finish with up and coming leaders, what they can be doing to position themselves to get into these higher level leadership roles.
Yeah, so this is under the category of tough love. No
Mm.
one's going to hand it to you. You've got to
Yeah.
do the work, right? And so, to any young leader that wants to progress in their careers, raising your hand. And then the other one is overcoming adversity. Bad things
Yep.
happen, right? I mean, stuff happens. What's the old saying? While you're making plans, life happens. Or Mike Tyson's infamous quote, everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the
It's
face.
in the face. Yep.
Don't fold up like a cheap tent. I mean, you have to be able to overcome adversity and own your career. What is it that you want to do? Do you want to be the CEO? Do you want to be a manager? Do you want to be a senior vice president? What is it that you want to do? And is someone saying, well, gee, I really don't know. I just won't accept that. I mean, we need to set goals for ourselves, setting goals for, and if you're a junior employee today, you may say, maybe I'd like to be CEO, but what I really would like to do is to be a manager over people that do what I do. I think I could really provide
Mm.
good leadership, and I like that. So whatever those incremental measures and milestones are, you have to manage your career no different than you're managing projects or whatever initiatives you have within your organization. You have to own it. You can't outsource your development. You can't outsource your upward mobility to someone within the organization. You've got to own it. You've got to manage it and be on the record for what it is you want to do.
I love that. What I heard is be the CEO. Your first CEO role will be of your own career,
Correct.
your own development.
Well said.
You are accountable for that. So I love that. That's a great one to end on. Your first CEO role is of your own career. Well, Dan, this is, as always, just such a pleasure. You've been, from afar, a mentor to people like me, where I see you, the passion you talk about principle, the culture, the ethics, the morals, the people there, the passion you talked about Joni, which I've heard, multiple times, and then your leadership in the community. You have been an inspiration to so many, but a huge inspiration to me on how to be a better, husband, father, leader, etc. So for that, I say thank you, my friend.
Well, you're too kind, Ed, and I applaud you and the personal and professional success that you've earned. I think about the thousands of clients that you have that without your sense of humor and your candor, how you ultimately set people up for success. What you do matters, and I can't think of a more noble career than helping people get on a path to financial security. So, thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Oh, awesome. Appreciate and love you, brother. And so now that's all for this episode of Led Leadership with Ed. And if you like hearing these stories that we're talking about and the people we have on, again, make sure that you like and comment and everything else. But this is Ed McGill, host of the podcast Led Leadership with Ed, signing off. Appreciate you, Dan. Have a great day, everyone.